Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
This is Stress-Free Living. I'd like to welcome you to our program today. I'm Ray Samich, and my first duty, which I love to do every single show, is to introduce all of you to my co-host, longtime radio colleague, and my spiritual brother, Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you today?
Wonderful, Ray. How are you?
Excellent, thank you. And we have some Zoom people with us here today, our Zoom audience that is joining us, talking with us. We know that we also have listeners all over the world, really, not only just in the United States and the Cleveland, Ohio area, but all over the world that are listening to us. And also enjoying now our Stress-Free Living Radio YouTube channel, which is available out there with over 75 programs. And hopefully we'll get out there and even add some more of the old vintage shows one of these days when we have a little more time to put those on there as well. But about 75 different shows on a variety of topics. So if you are ever looking to get some inspiration or clarification, maybe reduce some stress, because this is, after all, Stress-Free Living Radio, then please do join us on the YouTube channel, Stress-Free Living Radio. You can search by that and you can find some of your favorite shows. Ratanjit, interesting thought here today on our show. Something that I have often really wondered about. You know, we all have been engaged in our own lives. We've also been a part of other people's lives. And we see the passing of people's lives. And that really clarifies to us that life is human life. Our journey as in our physical body is limited. So it makes us wonder sometimes about how long we'll live. And we see young children, even babies sometimes dying. We see people that live into their 80s, 90s, hundreds now. It's happening frequently, more frequently, that people will into their hundreds. Does how we live impact how long we live? I'm not talking about, you know, being crazy and being a speed racer and overdosing on drugs and things like that, because obviously we know that if you do certain things, you're more prone to die at a younger age. But for the most of us that are just living our lives every day, does it matter how we act, how the good things we do, the bad things we do, the purpose of our life, does that affect, do you think, how long we're allowed to or forced, if you look at it that way, to be in our human bodies?
In scientifically speaking, you know, lifespan depends on our gender or genetics and access to a healthcare system, hygiene, and your diet, nutrition, exercise, lifestyle, crime rate, and so many things. So, but some of these things are beyond our control. So if I'm placed in a gender, I cannot change that. You know, of course, today's operations and all that, they can change.
That's another show.
Yeah. But let's talk about the state of mind which we control, and we can control our diet. So lifestyle definitely makes a difference. And so if you are born with genes, which are certain things dictates our lifestyles, if you take your habits under control of eating and thinking, you can bypass those genes and still live a healthier, longer life. So it is known that the way you think affects tremendously in your body. The biggest cause of our short life is our stress. And stress basically causes so many wrong chemicals in our body. And as a consequence of that, it affects our limbs, affects our organs, and affects all aspects of our body. And we end up shortening our life. So, so that is something which we have to, and also diet, plays a very, very important part. As so many books have been written, so many talks have been given. We are not going to go there today, but diet definitely makes a difference. And as example, you can see the Japanese, they eat a certain diet, and Japanese people generally live longer than most of the people. And healthcare system is also important. One of the reasons we, in the civilized countries, US has shorter lifespan than other countries. And one of the reason of that is our healthcare system. Although it is highly advanced, but this is, so many people cannot afford it, so many people cannot access it. So it makes a quite a bit difference to people who cannot afford it or cannot have access to the healthcare system. Pollution and all these environmental temperature conditions you live in, the neighborhood you live in also affects your life. And there's so many aspects of this. Now, there is another thing which is very strange. I'm going to give you an example. So in business world, you are a businessman, and
Please forgive me, Ratanjit. Please forgive me for cutting you off, and I don't want you to lose track of where you're going. But I just want to kind of close in today's discussion everything that you set up to this point, because while I know scientifically you are absolutely correct, all of those factors generally impact people's lives. Access to healthcare, the people that are in third world countries where they have no medical care whatsoever. So even if they get something as simple as a fever, it may lead to their death because they just don't have the healthcare, things like that. So I want to clarify where I wanted to go with the show today, because all of those factors are real. I'm not in any way saying that if you grow up in a neighborhood where everybody has guns next to you, they're all shooting each other, and drug deals are going down, and all these terrible things in those neighborhoods that people have to live with, obviously your risk of dying and your risk of high stress and everything is so much higher there. I'm not belittling any of that, but those almost prove the point of where I am going, because you have people that come out of those neighborhoods that overcome it. You have people that have a history of their whole family, bad genetics, dying at 50, and they live to be 80 because of the choices that they made in their life, and they overcome that. You have people that are in extreme conditions where the doctors say, you're probably going to die in 10 or 15 years, and they live for another 40 years. So it's almost, as much as those are scientifically accurate and bearable and proven by the facts, the exceptions to that are almost what I want to talk about. And as well as the people that live in what's considered to be typical lifestyles, typical neighborhoods, typical countries like the US and other advanced countries that do have healthcare and things like that. So I'm talking more about where you're going now, with state of mind, with state of purpose, with state of typical amounts of stress that we have when we live in so-called advanced countries. So I just wanted to clarify, because for people that may be listening today that are saying, it's a crazy topic, because if you are a race car driver, absolutely it affects how long you're going to live. Or if you are in a third world country, it's going to affect that. So I just wanted to clarify that before you continue, because I think I know where you're going to go next. And that's the topic that we're going to concentrate on here today, in terms of our state of mental health, if you will,
Yes.
our mental focus.
Now, we mentioned stress is a major cause of or shortening of our life.
Yes.
So there's another interesting statistics. When we see the lifespan of a CEO, a hired gun CEO, and a person who starts a business, entrepreneur. So the lifespan of both have stress.
Great.
In fact, the entrepreneur constantly live with stress.
Right.
Every decision, but interestingly, the CEO has a shorter lifespan than an entrepreneur. So entrepreneur generally lives in the mindset of a positive thinking. So there is a solution. I am going to find it. So the stress suddenly transformed from the negative stress to a positive stress.
Wow.
And whereas the CEO generally is more worried what his board is going to say, what is my investor going, what is our stock going to say. So they many times do not control all those things, and they are living in a stress which is negative. And they are living in fear and greed. So their stress comes from fear and greed and ego. Whereas the entrepreneur, although they have very high degree of self-worth, they think very highly of ourselves, but they are not part in typically ego. They are part mostly in finding a solution. They are generally find people who are smarter than them to help them. So when you are able to hire people who are smarter than yourself, you have agreed that your smartness has limitation, your knowledge has limitations. And this, you're in the search of finding a solution that is more important to them than their own ego, their own. So that is what helps entrepreneurs. There are entrepreneurs who have very high ego. There are entrepreneurs who live short life. So I'm not talking about just about every entrepreneur. These entrepreneurs who are part in adding the highest value live longer than entrepreneurs who are basically trying to take as much money, as rich as they end up falling the same bracket of a CEO, and they have a shorter lifespan. Right?
That's really a fascinating statistic, because on the surface, you would think that the corporate CEO has some security in the fact that they're not the one responsible for their own paycheck. I mean, I guess ultimately they are, because if they don't perform, they're going to be fired. But they don't have to. The company is probably more than capable of paying them. So that's the very first core thing they don't have to worry about every day. Whereas the entrepreneur, my experience with many, many entrepreneurs, especially at early levels of their career, is they're worried about every payment coming in so that they can pay their people that work with them and hopefully pay themselves at the end. And so you would think with the basic level of fear and greed that the CEO would be performing with less stress, because they're getting paid. The company that they're operating is most likely at a level of performance that they're able to just do their job and keep it moving. And whereas the entrepreneur, talk about stress. I mean, most entrepreneurs, especially going through difficult times like the pandemic, every single day they're worried, are they going to make it to the next day? How can they make it to the next day? And how can they provide if they have a family? How can they make sure that they're going to provide for their family? So that's an interesting, it's a very interesting statistic that the CEO is actually more stressed and lives a shorter life than a typical entrepreneur. Could it be the creativity of the entrepreneur puts their focus on not on themselves in terms of their own paycheck, but just trying to make a difference, trying to find new ways of keeping things going, with the awareness that if the business they're in right now fails, they can just make a quick change and get into something else that might work? I mean, is that what entrepreneurs are built with? Is that not only resourcefulness, but also that knowledge that they're not stuck in any one path. They can always change things. They're in control of their life.
Ultimately, they are highly purpose driven. They have, although the CEO has a purpose, and knowing somehow that purpose translates into what is in it for me. So that is the core purpose, which is reflected into all the decisions the CEO ends up making, because if my job is going to be secured or no. So ultimately, that purpose translates into what is in it for me. The purpose of the entrepreneur, when it gets transferred into what can he do to add higher value, that purpose generally has the support of the universe. Now, look at from another angle. In a corporation, generally there is a guy who is a maintenance guy. Generally, all the problems are, any call he receives, there is some problem which he has to address. So that is his job. So similarly, the mindset of an entrepreneur is constantly solving problems and generally adding value. And once he parks himself or herself into adding value mode, their stress becomes problem solving than problem itself. So they accept everything as a challenge. So just everyone who is entrepreneur does not follow this thought process. I have to be very careful.
Right.
So people who achieve tremendous success follow this thought process. So more than experience, more than education, more than anything else, your purpose of adding the highest value in all aspects, whether you have treating the employees, are you adding the highest value? Are you treating your customer? You are worried about your profitability? No, you are worried about adding the highest value. Once that becomes clear, your entrepreneur stress is totally different. So he begins or she begins to enjoy problem solving. Problem is basically a target which is going to help them to solve a problem to achieve the higher goal, to add the higher value, right?
We want to make note that many of our listeners and viewers are not either a CEO or technically an entrepreneur in a business, but you're talking more about the entrepreneurial spirit that is within us, whether whatever you may be doing in your life at this point. Do you have that spirit of the entrepreneur, or do you have that spirit of the CEO? Specifically, it works in a business environment, but it really works anywhere in life with how you address the issues of your life. Do you look at it as a challenge and as an opportunity to add value, or do you look at it on a more personal basis for what's in it for you? I think
so
that's a clarification here.
Everyone is a CEO, entrepreneur of their life.
Yeah.
So that's how
Exactly.
I see it. So once you become entrepreneurial mindset, your thought process, thank you very much for adding that. So the thought process is very crisp and very clear. So once you become an entrepreneurial, that means problem solver, your life changes.
Yeah. We're going to pursue that thought much more here in this program today. Is that the secret of living longer, and how long we are allowed to live? And I also want to get into with you, Ratanjit, the idea that is that dictated? I'd love to hear your opinion on that. Are we predisposed to know when we're to not know? We don't have the luxury of knowing, but has it been determined for us already, or are we really in control of our destiny in terms of how long we live? I want to ask your thoughts on that with all of your wisdom and knowledge that you have attained over your life. This is Stress-Free Living. We are trying to make all of our lives a lot more stress-free. Hopefully that'll continue on today's show. We'll be back with you in just a moment. All right, we have a short window here and two fabulous guests, Kim and Steve. If you have a thought, especially to ask Ratanjit.
Go ahead, Kim. Sorry.
I just want to say thank you for your comments regarding the distinction between a CEO's perspective and an entrepreneur, because I've been an entrepreneur. It'll be 30 years this May. And many times I wake up and I'm concerned that I have a lot of stress and what that might be doing to my life. So hearing the perspective of a CEO being in a state of worry versus coming from finding solutions just affirms the path that I chose. Because there's been times where I felt uncertain. I thought, well, maybe I should go and be an employee or be the CEO of a corporation. And so thank you for that. The other thing that came up was I'm in the Chicagoland area, the death gap of a neighborhood that I've recently been studying called Inglewood, which is probably 15 minutes to downtown Chicago. The death gap is 30 years.
My goodness.
The average income is $25,000. Poverty, violence, gun violence is unbelievable. It looks like a war zone. You are more likely to live 30 years longer if you live 15 minutes away downtown Chicago than if you live in Inglewood. So I'm looking at working with community leaders to address that issue.
That's tragic, just unbelievable. Okay, thank you. And I wasn't minimizing that. I hope you understood my earlier comments, because I get that. I totally get that. I didn't want to talk about the reasons physically. I was trying to get more into what we can do mentally. And maybe we can even address that. Maybe we can address getting out of that environment and what it takes to do that.
Ray, do you have a second real quickly or no?
We are
Okay.
back on Stress-Free Living. I apologize because our great Zoom guests have so many wonderful things to share to us. And I think we need to run. Nobody wants to hear this, but I think we need to run more commercials in the show, Ratanjit, so we have more of a chance to talk with our guests during the break. We are back on Stress-Free Living. Ray Sandwich with you and Ratanjit Sunday, and we will talk with them more during our next break. Ratanjit, I want to take a time out from the direction that we're going, and I just want to ask you kind of spiritually, because you are the most spiritually in tune person that I have ever met in my life. You always have just a way of kind of connecting to the universe. Do you think that we are truly in control? Or is there a plan that has been devised for each and every one of us, even to the point of you and me communicating right now, how we met 25, 30 years ago and how we're doing this program and how we're in this space at this moment? Has that all been predetermined? How much of our life and of our passing from this life is even in our control? Do you think all of it? Or do you think there's already been a plan that said you and I are going to be talking at this moment?
We mentioned that before. The ultimate power, the universal power, has the control. So if you operate in the body mode, your five senses mode, basically you are being controlled. But if you operate in the universal energy mode, you can change your life. So what our scriptures tell us, that it is God's will. But we have to understand that God exists within us. So there are two thoughts. There are books written on both these thoughts. And one thought says that life is controlled by your destiny. It's already written. You cannot change it. And there is another thought, which is you can change your life. You can, whatever you destined to do, you can do that. So what happens is, once you operate in the oneness mode, in the spiritual mode, which is what is enlivening you, the energy mode, which is basically the God. So you can call it whatever you want. So once you operate in that, you can change that. But in that mode, you cannot play the game of what is in it for me. You have to always make a thought process, which is how can I add the highest value to this bigger one, to this universe, to the universal power present in everything, everyone. So interestingly, so until you realize that, until you transfer, you give the power of thinking, your brain control to the universal power present in you, you cannot have the true positivity. You cannot have the true purpose. You cannot have the ultimate. And all that begins with our gratefulness. So all these gifts of life, once we realize is gifted to me, you become grateful. And in the grateful mode, Ray, it's known now, scientifically it's proven that in the grateful mode, your hormones released in your body are going to help you to repair, to make this human system operate in a better way, and you can cope with all the difficulties which are generally become a challenge rather than difficulty. You look at these things as challenge to solve, to find a solution, rather than getting interested in why it is me, why it is happening to me. So all that happens once you park in gratefulness, right?
No, I think earlier in the earlier segment, you talked about positive stress versus negative stress. And I think that's the difference. I think what you've just said, because there's a tremendous amount of stress in people's lives, and the more challenges we take on with an entrepreneurial spirit, then obviously we have even more challenges, and therefore the more stress. But if we do it, if it's positive stress, then it continues to drive us. It continues to help us overcome our illnesses, or even our physical frailties. We're more driven to overcome that and say, no, I can still do this, and I force myself to get better. My body reacts better to get better. And so I think that's all part of that positive stress mode. And if gratefulness is what causes that, if that's the differentiator, then thank God for that, because we can become, our stress can become more positive if we live in a state of gratefulness. So that's all fascinating to me. I think very positive. I think if people are looking to try to say, hey, how can I adjust my life? That's a perfect menu to follow, to enjoy, to be able to turn your negative stress into positive stress. Go ahead.
The main difference between positive stress and negative stress is in negative stress, when you cannot see the end to it. So this is it. And positive stress is when you find that that there is a solution. You can find it. So it becomes a positive, it converts into creativity and becomes a positive stress. So anytime you give up, so this is it, it becomes a negative stress. Anytime when you are looking for a solution, there is a way out, it becomes a positive stress. So that is the main difference.
And don't you think, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Don't you think the nature of the entrepreneur is that they don't give up? Is that they always believe there is a solution to
Absolutely.
a problem? Okay.
Yes.
I mean, it may be a total reversal, a total change of gears from everything that you've ever thought, paradigm shift, to use that phrase, but they do believe that there's a way out. I mean, that is the nature of the entrepreneur.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. During that last break, one of our wonderful guests here gave some facts that are just startling and devastating. And she was specifically referring to Chicago neighborhoods, where there's some neighborhoods that the life expectation is 30 years difference if you grow up in this neighborhood versus a typical Chicago neighborhood. She had other statistics too, but that's the one that just hit me between the eyes. 30 years difference, okay, if you live in neighborhood A versus neighborhood B in terms of your life expectation. How does that relate to what we're talking about, Ratanjit? Can that person who lives in that environment, that grows up in there, how can they be grateful? How can they allow this entrepreneurial spirit to come into their life in that extreme situation when there is no hope, there is no solution, there is no way out of that in the way that their mind sees and their body sees everything happening around them? Is it even possible for those most extreme challenges to be able to overcome?
Yes. Basically, when you take that number, the stat, as that's what is going to happen. I cannot change, I cannot do anything. So obviously that neighborhood can be changed. So one thing at a time. So you make a list of things which need to be changed. And certain things can be changed by law, certain things can be changed by education, certain things can be changed by resources, certain things. So it's once you form a team of people who are convinced on the same purpose as you to change, you are able to do that. So this is how things, there was one time, everybody was fighting, and today again, we are still fighting. So basically, you're constantly making a life which is driven by your purpose of making. Once we are born, we know that one day we are going to die. So in this lifespan, we need to take on a purpose of making this earth a better place than we came into it. So once that purpose drives you, and you have uniqueness, because everyone is designed uniquely. Everyone has unique capabilities. Everyone looks at life differently, uniquely. So once you form a team of unique people, you are able to look at a problem from different angles, and you can solve the problem differently from different aspects. So that is what we have to do. So again, as a person who is basically receiving all the, it's just like a doctor. Doctor always sees customers who are sick. So he looks at life, the life is full of sickness. No, he makes them better. He's looking forward to understanding the problem and making the situation better. So similarly, we are going to confront nothing but problems which can be solved and make it better. So this is one of those problems which is obviously causing the lifespan to be less, conditions of that, and there are so many things. We have to analyze it, we have to continuously learn, you have to bring the resources, we have to form a team. You can never give up, right?
And the solutions that you suggested for them are from outside sources, groups of people that are addressing the issues and coming up with all the different ways they can change it for the long term.
Inside and outside, both.
Okay.
Inside and outside, both.
And you're right. You are right. It has to come from within, and it has to come from the outside out. But I'm also thinking
you have to give them hope. They're basically hopeless. So they are in the stress mode, which they find, oh, this is how it's going to be. It's a negative stress. Convert that into positive stress, that there is a solution. We can solve this.
And that's, I guess, what I really want to concentrate on, because again, that's an extreme example, tragic extreme example, but all of us have some of that hopelessness in us. All of us have some of that despair that says, I'm in a situation that I can't change, whether I'm in an abusive relationship or whether I'm at a dead-end job and I'm afraid to quit because at least I have income coming in that's paying the bills. Whatever that scenario is, I have an illness that I can't overcome. A lot of us have those types of negative forces in our life every day that we are trying to overcome, and we don't know how to do it. The entrepreneurial spirit, I mean, we talked about how fabulous that is in terms of looking for answers. Is that is that the answer for all these people that are in this desperate mode to try to be more of a creative, to try to use their creative juices to try to overcome it? Is it the gratefulness that you talk about? I mean, somehow find things that you are grateful for?
It's like this. You're headed for a destination. You are taking somebody who is very sick into your car and going to the hospital. So suddenly the road is closed. So you cannot go. Suddenly you're going to find an alternative path to get to the hospital. So similarly, what you cannot change, accept it and find an alternative way to solve the problem. So don't get stuck into one situation, and you are constantly going to confront situation which cannot be changed within the resources you have, within the expertise you have, within the time frame you have. So you have to accept it, but there are things which you can change. There are always ways to find another way to solve the problem. So this is what entrepreneur does. So you can never give up. It's constantly the creativity which is given to us is amazing.
I love your simple analogies that you give that are just so easy to remember. If you have a loved one, a dear loved one that needs to be taken to the hospital, and you're the only person there that can do it, and you're driving them to the hospital, that's the most important thing right now. And in that moment and in your future to get them to the hospital, and it's a dead end street, you find a way to get that person, that loved one, to the hospital. You figure it out. Okay, one way or another, you're going to get assistance, you're going to use a different vehicle, you're going to use a different path, you're going to find a way, because that's the most important thing. So it's a very simplistic analogy, but it's powerful. Okay, when you're doing that, that's your one job and your only purpose at that moment is to be able to accomplish that. You will figure it out. You'll find a way to make that happen. If we can have that spirit in our life, certainly that will help us to overcome an awful lot of challenges. We are almost out of time, but we got to do a quick break here. We're going to take a quick break here on Stress-Free Living, come back and try to wrap up this very deep conversation today. Hope that you are enjoying it. We'll be right back. All right, Steve, it's your turn. I'm sorry. I had to cut you off last time. I was given the signal that we were on the air.
No worries. So as you just said, that analogy was wonderful. The hard part in that is that in life, sometimes, whether it's our mood, it doesn't have to be something bad to happen. You can just wake up in that mood. It's hard to say to yourself, I've got to pick up and get this done. Easier said than done, but having heard what he said, in that analogy of driving is fabulous. The thing that I was going to talk about before, which may or may not be appropriate now, was he talked about the CEO and how they dealt with it and and they live longer or they don't live longer. The reality, though, is that's only one part of your life. That's when you're at work. You have 14 hours where you're not the CEO. You're a family man. You're a member of the community. So the fact that a CEO lives longer doesn't, that's denying that he has the rest, or she has the rest of their life to live. And they may compensate in other parts of their life to live longer or live shorter. So again, work is one part of your life and you have a whole life to live. So I don't think you can put too much stock in whether it makes you live longer or shorter on the basis of what you do at work. That was what I was going to talk about.
There are many CEOs which live very long life. What happens to them is they become entrepreneur without knowing themselves. They basically become problem solver rather than, so as a consequence of that, they convert the negative stress into positive stress. Ray?
Well, we are still in the break here. I think we just have a couple of seconds and then we will get the cue to go back on. I'm out of town again, so I'm not able to monitor the station here. I'm across the country. but we'll hear back from them. I only imagine we have a couple of quick seconds. Kim, if you have something, or if not, we'll just get back into it. When the status playing, I've just been given that chat message. So we're probably just a couple of quick seconds away from coming back. Ratanjit, I do have that one item that I want to read. So it's, we have about 10 minutes total. I think that'll take about 3 minutes, so we can talk about 5 minutes here before I go to that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. And I'll let you introduce it. All right. We are back on Stress Free Living with Ratanjit and Ray, yours truly, Ray Samich. Thank you so much for being with us here today. We're trying to reduce our stress, and that is the purpose of our program every single week. And part of the stress is knowing that we have a limited lifespan here. And we want to believe, many of us want to believe in what's ahead of us when we pass from this life, but we don't really know for sure. Some of us have faith to believe in what our scriptures tell us. Others of us don't have that faith, and some of us simply just don't know. And so we all have a wonder and perhaps a bit of a fear about what is ahead of us. So the question really does come into play for many of us. How do I affect the number of years that I have on this earth? And Ratanjit, we've talked about that here today from a lot of different perspectives in terms of controlling our lives. Gratefulness, which I know is a super important word to you. It really does impact our positive ability to overcome challenges. Do you think in its simplest solution that a grateful person is destined to live longer?
That's true. You know, there's another thing which you have to remember. When you buy a car is a vehicle which takes you from one place to another. So you cannot travel without the car in a long distance. So when you buy the car, and after 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, it doesn't work anymore. Suddenly it becomes a junk, and you trade in and get a new car. So when you get a new car, you are excited to get a new car.
Mm-hmm.
You are never really depressed. Initially, of course, the old car dies and you wanted to long. Similarly, our human body is equivalent to a car. So when it is aging, it's old, it's ready to trade in, we are going to get a new car, we are going to get a new body. We should look forward to it rather than get depressed. So similarly, the soul within this human body never dies. The real us never dies. So basically, the purpose of life, is known that when you think positive, your lifespan increases 11 to 15%. When you have a purpose, your lifespan is enhanced. When your purpose has to be, there are two purposes. Everyone has a purpose. Either to become rich, what is in it for me? When you are setting a purpose from the human body mode, which is always going to be what is in it for me. When you're setting a purpose from the enlivening force within the body, you're always going to have a purpose. How do I add value to others? So it is the purpose to add value to others, which gives you higher and better life. So understanding this basic cause, so anytime a CEO becomes an entrepreneur, their lifespan goes up. There are CEOs which live longer, very long life. But once their mindset become from CEO to entrepreneur, instead of what is in it for me, how can I add value to my customer, my my society, my fellow human beings. So in the process, you will become environmental friendly. Your product, your services do not subtract value, they always add value. So basically, your mindset changes completely. So there is a universal laws which I want you to read that in so it will summarize this whole thing. There's a law of grace, which basically says the gift of life in its full integral glory is only granted to us as we continue to add value to the bigger one by completely and gratefully engaging all our creativity and capacity until our last breath. There is no retirement in this whole thing. So I want you to read this whole thing a little bit more clearly so that our listeners can get it.
All right, I am going to take a moment and do that because I think it is so powerful. You shared this with me just before we went on the air today. I'm going to start again from the top.
Okay.
The law of grace, the gift of life in its full integrated glory, is only granted to us as we continue to add the highest value to the bigger one by completely and gratefully engaging all of our creative capacities until our last breath. Life is only a gift. We have no rights, no contract, no royalties to our life, our wellness, our fortune, our loved ones, or anything related to our life. We don't even choose our family, country, religion, race, and the gender we're born with. Most of us are not satisfied with what life has given us, and we constantly find the shortcomings, negative aspects, and an inability to fulfill our egoic desires, wants, and needs, infested with insecurities, fears, prejudices, jealousy, lust, and greed. When we fully comprehend the law of grace within the oneness paradigm, we are then able to immerse ourselves in total unconditional gratitude and grace, which are reflected in our practicing the highest order of excellence, respect, integrity, compassion, discipline, and honesty. It's only then that the direction of our thoughts and actions changes from others to me to others, and our true purpose and mission in life become clear, which is to add the highest value unconditionally in every thought and action. In spite of worldly limitations, handicaps, distractions, addictions, fears, and obstacles, the oneness paradigm sets free the unlimited power of creative energy in all that we do. Consequently, we are able to create and achieve amazing and unprecedented success in every endeavor and aspect of our life. In the oneness paradigm, there is no such thing as retirement. We must engage our creative capacities on a daily basis, moment to moment, in all of our interactions and endeavors until the last breath. Research shows that when we're constantly engaged with meaningful challenges and projects that add value to society, we are gifted with good physical, mental, and emotional health. This leads to higher self-worth and confidence, and the result that we are more fulfilled, happy, and content. Those words are so powerful. When you shared that at the beginning of the program, I said we have to end with that here today. Ratanjit, that truly encapsulates everything that we talked about and summarizes it so beautifully and powerfully. With your respect, I'd like to put that up on our Stress-Free Living radio channel associated with this here today, so people can read that again if they care to.
Yes, very good.
Okay, so we'll do that. Any final thoughts? We have actually we don't have any time left. That took a little longer than I thought. Ratanjit, thank you so much for sharing all of these thoughts with us here today. We know it's a deep topic. We know that we've just skimmed the surface and just started to have a conversation about controlling our destiny and how long we live. But I think you made a pretty good dent on the conversation. Thanks to our wonderful guest here on our Zoom call and to all of you, wherever you may be. We hope that we added value to your life today. Thank you, Ratanjit.
Thank you. Thank you.
Remember, everybody, we're all playing the same game. Have a great day. That was a quick hour today. Unbelievable for me. I can't believe how quickly that all transpired. Kim or Steve, anybody have any thoughts here? We're off the air.
I just want to say thank you. And of course, I appreciate Ratanjit, and you too, Ray, just for creating this show and raising everyone's awareness and consciousness, just letting us know that we're all connected. We're all one. So being in these conversations, hopefully will, inspire us to come up with solutions that make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you for being with us. Dr. Steve?
No, I think that it sums it up. It's a mission statement. That's everybody's mission statement. My parents said it a little differently. Treat others the way you want to be treated, but don't just say it, actually do it. And when I have young dentists and dental students who come to me for mentoring, and they always ask, what's your mission statement? Do you have it on a card? And I point to my pictures of my parents and say, it's about treating others the way you want to be treated, but you have to do it, don't say it. And I think that's what Ratanjit said in that closing statement.